Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to continue our look into the Finders cult, the Finders investigation, starting with a documentary I released last February 2019, Who Will Find What the Finders Hide. And for those of you who've been paying attention lately, I just did this deep dive into the Finders FBI Files number 3. I'm probably going to leave that one up, but I would say you can just skip that one because what I'm about to do right now is going to be more of a summary. And that one I was kind of like and scrolling through it and trying to find the details, which, sometimes the live deep dives are fun, but I feel like in the interest of time, it's just better for me to look at everything ahead of time and to know what I'm going to talk about. So I did that already, and I've got about 15 different pages that I want us to go through here. So this is the Finders, part 3 of 3, as you can see here, coming from the FBI files that will be linked in the description of this video. And starting in October 2019, the FBI started to release document dumps related to the Finders cult, unannounced, just on a Friday night. And then in February they did a second set, and then apparently after that they did a third set, but I only recently found out about it. So I went through the files to see if there's any pieces of the puzzle or just important or interesting things that you guys might want to know. Now, if you're fresh to this, guys, I really do got to go back to theconsciousresistance.com, click on our tab, check out the documentaries, and go there to see Who Will Find What the Finders Hide. Also, on our YouTube channel and all of our social media channels, they're just conveniently in a playlist on YouTube, you will find my Finders investigation, including previous interviews I've done with researchers about this, my 8-part investigation that I did while I was making the film, and there's so much information on this that I honestly think that you should just go to our work on the Finders, because other than maybe John Brisson, most of the people who are talking about the Finders are just taking our work or just repeating it. They're not actually providing anything new. I do feel pretty confident that my work is the definitive work on the Finders, as well as what John Brisson's working on. But without further ado, let's get into this. So we're going to skip ahead here to page 6, and we're looking at a statement here which mentions something about destruction of files. So check this out if you guys see this. So one of the things you have to be aware of, and this is why I took the time to read this ahead of time, is it's difficult to understand any of the things that are being said at some points. So right here, though, after this heavily redacted section, you can see that somebody providing something further stated that when he saw the July 21st, 1993 letter from someone, wherein on page 4 it intimated that someone else may have destroyed files, he immediately asked for an internal investigation by the U.S. Customs, which was conducted by someone, Internal Affairs for Customs, in that area. So this is the first mention of the potential for files to have been erased or destroyed, and we can, sort of suspect that ourselves based on the fact that you have Customs Agent Ramon Martinez and various pieces of circumstantial evidence coming together to point to the fact that the Finders cult was involved in intelligence activities and trafficking of children and who knows what else, but somehow all that evidence is not around today. So it's either been destroyed, hidden, etc., and this shows that there was some discussion internally about the potential for the files to have been deleted or destroyed by somebody. We're going to skip on to page 12 here, and this is another interesting one that we covered recently. It says in early 1987, somebody advised he became aware of the Finders group when the Reston office and someone became involved in the searches. He claims not to know all the details of the search or investigations conducted by the U.S. Customs Service and somebody else. Further, he stated that somebody told him he purposely has kept someone out of the matter, but he has told U.S. Customs Service Commissioner George J. Weiss everything. During this period of 1987 searches, somebody recalled something, asked him if his unit had received any paperwork concerning the Finders, and when he replied in the negative, he was told by someone to keep it that way. So there's again more information showing that various officials were trying to keep things quiet about the Finders. Now we're going to go to the next page, and you see here somebody advised he met with someone in State Attorney's Office investigator, somebody else, on October 9th, 1992. And at the time, they inquired as to information available from Customs Service concerning the Montessori schools. So just a random mention of the Montessori schools, but you guys will know if you've seen the YouTube channel, we've read the documents, and John Brisson's interview with Henry Skip Clements, formerly of the FBI. He talks about the Glendale Montessori schools And these schools, as well as others, have been sometimes used for these purposes of trafficking children. Doesn't mean that every single school is involved in that, of course, but it's just something to be aware of. We're going to go ahead to page 21 now. All right, you see Future Enterprises is what we're looking at here. Future Enterprises was one of the front companies operated by the Finders Group, among others. It says, this is while they're looking in the CIA files. It says, of interest were references to CIA Office of Logistics contracts for training classes on PC skills and Microsoft Word, processing training with a firm named Future Enterprise. These contracts appear to have been made between April 1986 and October 1993. Now, if you understand those dates, April 1986, October 1993, that the Finders incident in Florida happened in 1987. The second investigation into them happened in 1993. So during that entire time, people who were working at Future Enterprises and collaborated with them were also members of the Finders, and the CIA had happened to have contracted with this company for a computer programming class and training their agents, basically. And it's just another one of those random coincidences that tie the Finders to the intelligence agencies. We're going to skip on to page 24 here. And we're looking for these names. I asked some of you guys to look these up last time, and I know some of you did. Please do send me that information. I know that these guys, one of them is dead and the other is still alive. But they mention here that Acting Assistant Attorney General John C. Keeney, Criminal Division, Department of Justice, and Assistant Director Larry A. Potts, the DAJ requested that the FBI conduct a preliminary inquiry into allegations made by somebody concerning child sex abuse. So the reason I bring up these names of Larry A. Potts and John C. Keeney is because we do have a few names of people who we know had to have been involved in the cover-up. There's Fiona, I can't remember her name. She worked with the Customs Service. She's from some other documents and from John Brisson's reporting. And, it's important for us to just pick apart and to try to identify these people, because for somebody like me, this is what I do, is I try to track them down to see if they're still alive and see if they want to talk. So I could potentially find some of these gentlemen that might still be alive, or women, whoever involved or were involved in the investigation, and see if they have anything different to say now at this point. Now, this part as well, where it mentions somebody's claim that there was a cover-up by the State Department and the CIA, says someone alleged that the Finders are involved in a well-organized child abuse scheme, and that the CIA, in conjunction with the State Department and the FBI's Foreign Counterintelligence Division, conspired to cover up these abuses. So that's they're showing you that people believe this is happening. We go on to page 29, and this has been another interesting aspect of this for you. Those of you who have seen the documentary or paid attention to my work early on, this is one of the gentlemen that I first found when I was researching this that really blew my mind, as far as wondering, and I think in some ways providing evidence, that people were killed, just like with Epstein. Various people who tried to blow the whistle or to speak up, they end up dying. Sergeant John Stitcher was not an old man. He was active during this time, and then within a couple of years before the Finders case comes up again, by the time there's a 93 investigation where they're actually investigating whether the CIA covered this up after the initial 1987 investigation, by that point, John Stitcher was already dead. Now, why is John Stitcher important? Because as you can see here on page 29, it says, Detective someone advised that the Metro PD Sergeant John Stitcher, deceased, had contacted the CIA concerning the Finders and had obtained this information. Someone advised that the CIA had nothing to do with the children or his investigation into the alleged child abuse. Someone stated that he was never instructed by anyone from the CIA, the FBI, the State Department, or any other organization to end the Finders' investigation, and that his investigation ran its normal course without interference. Which doesn't really line up, because if you understand the investigation, you remember my reports, they talk about how when they first got the kids from the men, that there was bomb threats and that they had to go hide the children and things of that sort. So it's not like it was just some simple, regular, everyday case. It definitely seemed like there was more to it, and that the true story didn't always make it into the documents, basically. And so these documents are relevant, but at the same time, they're also not the full truth anyways, right? So John Stitcher says that when Raymond Martinez came to the Metro PD, John Stitcher met with him and told him that the CIA had taken it over, had become a CIA matter, and that somebody told him to back off of it, right? So then a couple of years later, John Stitcher's dead. Obviously, you can understand why I'm saying he's important. So then here, On page 30, they talk again about John Stitcher, and basically it seems like there's a report that was written by John Stitcher and somebody else, and we don't have the full evidence. Now, on 11/12/93, the Washington Metro Field Office interviewed somebody from the customs agent who provided information concerning the U.S. Customs Service 1993 response to blank on U.S. Customs Service child exploitation investigation. He had interviewed U.S. Customs Service Special Agent somebody, which is maybe Ramon Martinez, and you can see the whole section is blocked out. So they're taking away a good chunk of testimony here, guys. I mean, this is what we've seen through all the finders documents that the FBI is releasing. There's some pieces of the puzzle here, but there's no major, whistles being blown or anything like that, because they've kind of got it out there already. And to be quite honest, nobody's paying attention. People aren't really paying that hard attention about how these kind of groups operate. So down here at the bottom, you see that it says blank related that his review of USC files located no references to the finders or to the CIA or any other intelligence organization having been involved or making inquiries concerning the finders. He advised that his review of the MPD files on the finders did reveal two references to the CIA, one in a report written by Sergeant John Stitcher, which is who we just talked about, and the other one in a report written by Detective somebody else. So that's redacted. So somebody wrote a report about the CIA potentially being involved, and we don't know their name. That means they're still alive, because John Stitcher's dead, so they don't seem to be minding putting his information out there. Now on page 31, we got some other interesting details. This is, again, under these heavy redactions here. You have this little bit of information, and this is not previously unknown. This is just for those who might not know these details. I'm sharing it with you. But here on page 31, we see the mention of Congressman Charlie Rose, who is one of the people who was investigating the Finders cult in the late 80s. And you see here there's a blank and says that Chief Tucker, Melvin Tucker from the Tallahassee Police Department, advised that he has been recently contacted by a number of individuals concerning the case. He had been contacted both telephonically and in writing by Congressman Charlie Rose and somebody from CBS News 48 Hours. Both Rose and this other person requested that Chief Tucker provide them with, quote, all reports in your possession concerning the organization known as the Finders. Chief Tucker advised that he had also been contacted by somebody else from the Washington Times concerning the case. So what that does is it shows you more information and examples of the fact that the 48 Hours was going to do a primetime investigation into this. And for some reason, somebody told them to back off. Even Ramon Martinez, who I reached out to during the Finders documentary, he's the original customs agent who was blowing the whistle on all this. He mentioned the fact that 48 Hours was involved or was going to get involved. And they may have even filmed some interviews, but for one reason or another, it never aired. They never played it on TV. Now let's continue. Again, we have a mention of evidence being destroyed. Let me show you that. Okay, so right here it says on 11/16/93, special agents from Jacksonville Division, they talked to Chief Tucker of Tallahassee, and it says, quote, all the evidence in the case that was obtained was either returned to its owners or otherwise destroyed. Now we know that the evidence, the initial bags of naked pictures of kids and instructions on buying children and all these different, signs that this was an international group that had connections all over the world, those bags were taken out of the warehouse. We have pictures of them walking out with bags. But Ramon Martinez tried to go speak to Detective Bradley in the Washington MPD to get more information, and he never was able to. It was kept from him. So that's important to remember. Now we're going to skip ahead to page 35, the CIA files. And this is another interesting aspect because we really haven't had much time to be able to dig into the CIA files because most of them have not been released publicly. This shows some CIA files here. So again, what we're looking here is that there's mention of a secret memo. So right here they start a review of CIA files. On April 29th, 1994, Paralegal, Office of General Counsel, somebody advised that she was in the process of obtaining additional documents requested by the Washington Metro Field Office. And the FBI headquarters requested that CIA search all records of the agency concerning a number of individuals or entities associated with the finders. A file jacket containing the results of CIA name traces conducted as a result of the request contained a CIA internal memo dated 12/23/93, from someone, Office of General Counsel, to DCI regarding recent media articles alleging CIA involvement interference in the 1987 Finders investigation. Attached to this memo were copies of news articles on the Finders, including the U.S. News and World Report article, which we've covered before, Washington Times article. Also attached was a photocopy of Sergeant Stitcher's report. So again, Sergeant John Stitcher playing a role again. This is the guy that said the CIA had closed the matter down and become an internal matter, and then he died within a couple years. So they have a photocopy of his actual report, which we've never seen. We've just heard statements that he told Martinez, and a secret CIA secret memo to the FBI headquarters dated December 27th, 87. So we know that they have copies. We still haven't seen these copies of Sergeant John Stitcher's report, which talks about CIA involvement and cover-up. That would make it more solidified if we could get that. And apparently a secret CIA memo to the FBI dated December 27th, 1987, requesting that the FBI advise CIA should this group have any known association with the Finders group. So you can tell they're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and more than likely there were people who were also covering these things up as it went along. Whether that means other people coming in and saying that Martinez was crazy, or Stitcher doesn't know what he's talking about and they couldn't find any evidence, or just outright destroying evidence and getting rid of things. I mean, this has all the classic signs of a cover-up. And this is just the surface. We're not even getting deep into this today. We're just kind of going over these latest documents and what they show. But if you're new to this and you never heard of the Finders, do watch our documentary, Who Will Find What the Finders Hide. Now, page 36, right here, I thought this was interesting too. They talk about, this is still the CIA files where they're trying to go in and understand who the Finders are. They start talking about Marion Petty's wife, who, as I've told you before, worked for the CIA from 1952 until 1961. On March 24th, 1994, the CIA was requested to obtain all specific information in their records concerning the CIA. On April 29th, 1994, the CIA representatives provided Washington Metro Field Office with some of the additional information and stated that they are continuing to obtain the rest of the information. And then this is cool because it's basically a review of search warrant returns. Now, if this was not heavily freaking redacted, you would think that we would be able to see what exactly they're talking about, what has been found in there. And there's some information. We got the IBM computer, Macintosh computer, compact computer, personal papers, and things that we've seen before and heard about before. But they don't tell us exactly what's in these papers or these photos. It just says assorted papers and photos. There was a notation besides their items, kitchen, closet. Then they talk about another search warrant, and again, there's still a good amount of things that are redacted from this file. Review of the Washington Metro file shows this part where one of the agents asks or wants to make sure he's not stepping on anybody's toes, and this is something we've covered before as well. Let me see. Okay, so we got Sergeant John Stitcher again. John Keeney's showing up. Metro PD Department prepared by John Stitcher, dated February 1987, and captioned Finder's involvement with the CIA, indicated that on February 18th, 87, Detective somebody spoke with Special Agent someone of the CIA concerning any contact that the members of the Finders had with the CIA. Someone confirmed that somebody, Isabel, deceased at the time of the report, was a CIA employee from 1950 to 1971. They're talking about probably talking about Marion Petty and his wife, and how she was involved in the CIA, and whether or not that had anything to do with him. If our investigation was okay, right here. So it says at the report. Now it's hard to read this, and it says blank had asked Special Agent somebody, quote, if our investigation was treading on anyone's toes out there. This person replied, sort of, and he acknowledged that they had someone working on the case since it was first broke in the media. He also stated, blank, blank. Look at these two big paragraphs. So it's hard to really know what the heck is going on here. Now, I'm going to go down here. We're on page 39. And this report states that the CIA apparently has a vested interest in somebody and or the group. They have not contacted any of the investigating agencies. Blank, lots of blanks here. There will be no justification. The report was marked confidential and do not disseminate, signed by a Sergeant John H. Stitcher. It is noted that throughout the report, the name somebody had been lined out and the name somebody had been penciled in above the lined out name. Now, what could that indicate? Could it mean that somebody was changing John H. Stitcher's story of what he found, or is it just totally nothing? But it's interesting that they throw that in there, that somebody's name had been scratched out and somebody's name had been placed on top of them in this report from John Stitcher, And John Stitcher's dead now, and he was dead whenever this second investigation was going off, so maybe somebody saw it fit to tell the story that they wanted to. Now we're going to go on to page 40, which is where we are now. Documents redacted. This is an important part here. Let me see if I can find what I was looking for. The Tallahassee Police Department has contacted customs servants to obtain assistance in identifying 6 children and 2 adults. So this is going through the timeline of events. The memo, right here, they said the U.S. Customs Service Special Agent accompanied the Metro PD on the execution of search warrants at the address, at which time he was able to observe and access the entire building. This is Ramon Martinez. Remember, this guy goes in there and says that he sees all this crazy stuff related to kids, trafficking, to it looks like intelligence operations, to some heavy-duty stuff, not just some random run-of-the-mill cult, as we're often told. This is just some group of crazy kids. The memo notes that during the execution of the search warrant by MPD, the U.S. Customs Service, and then you see this big giant blank. The memo also notes that on February 6, 1987, the U.S. Customs Service and the special agent had met a Metro PD detective at the warehouse on somewhere. He was granted unlimited access to the premises, and he was able to observe numerous documents which described explicit sexual conduct between the finders and, this is where it gets into the stuff. The memo reports that the U.S. Customs Service special agent saw blank, 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 blank. So they talk about numerous files related to activities in different parts of the world. I mean, guys, this is just, it sucks that this is the kind of shit we got to work with, because the files are so convoluted at this point. It's hard to get anywhere near the actual truth. Now, I think that with the Finders documentary, I was able to get pretty close to the truth, and hopefully we can get more to the truth. But I'm going to continue to dig into these files as they come out, because we need to know what's happening with the government. We need to know how involved they are with trafficking children, and that might sound like a crazy idea to some people, but once you realize and you understand that this has been going on for quite some time, it becomes less of a fairy tale and more of a sick reality that exists. So let's jump ahead to page 46. They talked about a file being purged here, and this was interesting to me. And this one does not have as good of fine print, so it's harder to read a little bit. It says the CIA's Office of Security had indicated that in their record checks, they located a file containing somebody, and I think it was Isabel Petty, which was Marion Petty's wife. It says Deputy Assistant Attorney General DeGregory, so this is one of the people, requested that the FBI determine from the CIA, number 1, what information was in the file which contained blank, and 2, if there's no information in this file, did the CIA purge the file of information concerning something? If so, what was the file? Why was that file purged? So they're mentioning files being missing, files being gone, and they're trying to ask questions like, what information in the file was contained? And if there's no information in the file, then did the CIA purge the file of information, and why? Why was that file purged? So that's kind of another huge piece of the puzzle, as you can see, that the CIA is up to no good, guys. They're doing their usual thing. So another thing is there's this section that mentions something about maybe somebody entering the warehouse beforehand, because for those who remember, the kids were arrested with the men in Florida in 1987, and then that set off a search where they started going through the Finders properties in Virginia, as well as their warehouses in D.C. And it's often been suspected, based on other evidence, that they were tipped off because they had, pre-internet ability to communicate and send messages. And it seems that somebody may have given them a heads up and allowed them to get rid of a lot of the evidence. So in fact, that maybe whatever Martinez saw that we have now been able to find in the last 30 years, maybe that was only a small piece of the puzzle of what was actually in the Finders warehouse, and somebody tipped them off. Right here it says, so you see right here, somebody was interviewed though, and it says, blank, 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 to obtain details in all documents regarding somebody's allegation that he had in his possession a document, origin unknown, which alleged that unnamed individuals went into the 2 Finders properties and cleared out evidence prior to the searches conducted by Washington, D.C. officers on February 87. So again, it's more potential evidence that somebody might have tipped off the Finders in one way or another. We're going to skip ahead to 65. Okay, right here, this page, on page 65, they're talking about interviewing an ex-FBI agent who was involved in the investigation. It says Blank was interviewed within the office of General Counsel CIA, Langley, Virginia. After being advised the identity of the interviewing agent and the purpose of the interview, he provided the following information. And this goes through some basics. It doesn't really get into anything new, but there is this interesting aspect down here. So this officer is basically being shown documents from when he was involved in the investigation in 1987. And as I said, that he starts relating his first involvement with the finders is in 1987. Then he basically says right here at the bottom, he recalled that there were only two connections between the CIA and the finders. He Blank stated that the first connection was that, and this could be that Marion Petty's wife was involved, worked for the CIA. But then you see this next page is literally just a huge blank-ass page. I mean, what story is being told there? And here's another one. This is 2 blank pages, 3 blank pages here, coming from a former FBI agent being interviewed about his role in the finders investigation and the connections between the CIA and the finders. And there's literally 3 blank pages. I mean, you got to assume there's something there they still don't want us to see, something that's important. Now, let me see. Let's go ahead to page 69. Here we are. This is a memo for the record. I've never seen this before. April 1st, 1965. Now, this is interesting, guys. The finders took place in 1987. This is a memo from 1965. From what I can gather here, and for those of you who really want to key in on this part, it's on page 69, and it goes in for the next, at least into the page 70 and beyond, where what I think we're witnessing here is an investigation or an interview with Marion Petty, who was the founder of the finders, who worked in naval intelligence, then claims he became a chauffeur for some of the most high-profile people in military and government, and then claims that he, that was it, that he stopped doing it, he had nothing to do with them anymore. That's not likely to be true. It seems all evidence seems to point that he continued to work for them under some non-official capacity, but he was still working for them. But it's interesting because this shows that as far back as 1965, they were interviewing him and trying to understand him. And it seems from what I can gather that they started to understand that Marion Petty likes intelligence, that he sees himself as some sort of amateur detective, as they say right here. Subject said to me that he is an amateur detective and that prior to leaving his room on the blank, he had arranged his shirts in a certain way and closed the door to his room in a certain way, and upon returning determined that his room had been searched. Subject felt that blank searched his room after he left. Now this could either be somebody who was associated with Petty himself, but it's just interesting. It goes into different aspects of his history. Subject further stated on the night of March 1965, he came to the house and stayed all night. She, blank, had a night with her and left at approximately 3 a.m. and picked her up in his automobile. Another bit of information, subject said that blank said to him was that he had a blank. Subject felt that he could not write the article which bears his name if he had blank. So, I mean, there's just so much missing here. But there's pieces of the puzzle buried in these finders files. And again, this is the third release by the FBI since October 2019. Only 9 months after my documentary came out. For one reason or another, I'm not saying it's because of us, but for one reason or another, now that more people are poking around and asking questions about the finders, they decided to release these files. And there might be more on the way. We don't know. But this is what we have now. So this section here, it does seem to be, for me, an interview with Marion Petty, or at least a discussion of Marion Petty and who he was. And it says during the conversation, the subject went to some detail concerning his personal life. He said that he considered his something blank a waste of time and his employment as something as a complete loss. Subject said he took a job as a laborer in an attempt to progress, which was a slow process. He said that he is now serving something and then would have to serve time in the something. Subject said blank at times seemed depressed and emotional. So again, what is this pointing at? We go on now to page 72 here, and there's more files on Marion Petty and Isabel Petty, which was his wife, who worked for the CIA. It's obvious that they were studying, asking questions about her and looking into her and him as far back as the late 60s, mid to late 60s, 65, 69. These are dates that we hadn't previously seen associated with the finders because we've mainly been talking about 1987 and 1993. So this is just more information that the CIA was all in touch with them, investigating them, maybe working with them, We don't really know the full extent, and there's a lot of redactions here. Again, I'll put the links to the FBI files in the description below for those who want to take the time to do this. And I will put the show notes. I will add the files that I found here. Now, this is interesting, too. I don't even know what this is about. Page 75. Something written by Marion Petty in the Vista Travel School. We could look this up. Eric Heiberg. I mean, there's some references. We could probably track this down. But it looks to be like a copy of some publication where Marion Petty is describing the farm that he ran in Virginia, what he called Ragged Mountain Farm, Sperryville, Virginia. We have decided to experiment with a new idea, the Share the Farm plan from September 30th, 1963. So going back again to the 60s, the FBI has copies of written reports or documents from Marion Petty talking about his farm. It shows that they had been investigating this group for some time, which is what we thought before. Now, perhaps at some point they decided that they wanted to work with Marion Petty because maybe they thought he had, good skills or was maybe useful to them in some way. We don't know the truth of the matter. We go down here, though, to page 90, and this is interesting. Diane Sherwood, who is said to be one of the founders of the Finders, if not the founder, maybe even a founder prior to Marion Petty. We have a copy of her passport here. You can see her birth date, and you can see the year. This is given to her on June 15th, 1979. She was born in December 2nd, 1936. You can go on here a little bit further. Diane Sherwood, there's another picture of her. And the interesting thing is this is all written on the U.S. The consulate in Hong Kong. So again, they had access and had connections to Hong Kong, to China, which is what we'd heard before during some of the other documents that Ramon Martinez had found. Barbara Sylvester, she was another early member of the Finders, if I remember correctly. She is the one that died there, and there was this controversy about whether or not, she was murdered, or if it was just in fact that they listened to Marion Petty when he told them not to get her, medical help, and that she ended up dying. It's either Diane Sherwood or Barbara Sylvester. I just can't remember off the top of my head right now, but I'm pretty sure it was Barbara Sylvester that died, and Diane Sherwood was the original Finders member. So that brings us towards the end. There's not much after that, but this is 107 pages adding to the story of the Finders. And as I said, guys, we have this on our website, theconsciousresistance.com, under our documentaries page. I'll put this right here for you. For those who want to purchase the documentary, and when you purchase the documentary via our Vimeo account, you get access to the full documentary that you can download. It's the full version. It's 7 gigabytes HD version of the documentary. Of course, the transcript is already available for free on the website with all the links you need to know. But also, for those who purchase it and who email me, then you're going to get access to all of my Finders research documents. I originally had planned to do this on a USB drive thing, but it just ended up not working out. So instead, you go here to theconsciousresistance.com/thefinders, click on this purchase your copy here. It takes you to our Vimeo page. You can download, purchase the documentary, and then email me. And I'm actually in the process of uploading all my files right now. I have such a crappy connection out here in Mexico. It's taking forever. But I am going to get to all of you who paid for it and who would like to see every single file that I have found, every old article, every interview I did related to the Finders, just to make sure that that information is out there one way or the other. And if you feel like sharing with other people, well, then even better. But that's where we're going to leave it for now, guys. I appreciate your time listening to this. Like I said, I tried to go through the files myself and look ahead of time so it wasn't so much and kind of dragging my feet. Instead, hopefully this was more productive. So thank you guys for listening. This is Derrick Broze of The Conscious Resistance. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.